Let me tell you something most people won't be honest about. Just because you stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped checking in, does not mean you disappeared from his mind. That's not how emotions work. People think silence means forgetting, but silence actually makes things louder. When you're no longer present, your absence starts speaking for you. And if you were a woman who loved genuinely, consistently, and without games, trust me, you didn't just vanish. Let me tell you something real, and I want you to really hear this. Absence doesn't erase impact, it reveals it. People think that when you stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up, you slowly fade away in someone's life. That's a lie. What actually happens is the noise disappears and the truth finally gets loud. When you were there, doing your part, loving, supporting, checking in, your presence became familiar. And when something becomes familiar, people stop noticing its value. Not because it's not valuable, but because they got comfortable assuming it would always be there. See, when you're present, you fill the space. When you're gone, the space stays empty, and that emptiness starts asking questions. That's when a man starts realizing what your presence really meant. He starts noticing the silence in places where your voice used to live. He notices that nobody asks him the way you did, nobody understands him the way you did, nobody believes in him the way you did. Absence has a way of exposing the truth because there's nothing left to distract from it. Here's what most people don't understand about men. Men don't process emotions in the moment the way women do. A lot of times, they process emotions later. They realize the value of something after it's gone, not while it's right in front of them. So when you step back, when you stop forcing communication, when you stop explaining yourself, you give his mind the space to finally catch up with his heart. And once that happens, the memories don't disappear, they replay. He starts remembering the little things. Not the arguments, not the stress, but the way you showed up consistently. The way you stood by him when he wasn't at his best. The way you believed in his potential when he was still figuring himself out. Those things don't get erased by time or silence. If anything, silence sharpens them. Because now there's nothing new replacing you. Absence also reveals impact because it removes choice. When you were available, he had the option to call you or not, to text you or ignore you, to appreciate you or take you for granted. Once you're gone, that option is gone too. And losing access hits different than losing interest. He doesn't get to decide anymore. And that lack of control forces reflection. You have to understand something important, T. If your presence didn't matter, your absence wouldn't be noticed. If you didn't leave an emotional mark, there would be nothing to miss. The fact that silence feels heavy means something real existed. Emotional impact doesn't vanish just because communication stops. It settles, it sits, it waits. And it shows up when he least expects it: late nights, quiet mornings, moments of failure, moments of success he wishes he could share. So when you think stepping away makes you forgotten, remember this: distance doesn't delete meaning, it exposes it. Your absence doesn't make you irrelevant, it forces him to finally feel what your presence was protecting him from feeling all along. Let me break this down in a way that's honest and real. Men remember how a woman made them feel long after the conversation stopped. It's not about how often you texted or how many times you called. It's about the emotional experience you created in his life. A man can forget words, dates, and details, but he does not forget the feeling of being understood, supported, and believed in. That feeling settles deep, and once it's there, it doesn't leave just because contact ends. When you were present, you were part of his emotional routine. You were the person he talked to after a long day, the one who calmed him down when life got heavy, the one who reminded him of his worth when he doubted himself. That emotional role doesn't get replaced easily. So when you step back, there's a gap. And in that gap, his mind starts searching for what used to fill it. That's when he realizes that not everyone offers the same emotional safety you did. Men often don't recognize emotional value while they're receiving it. They're focused on what's in front of them: work, pressure, goals, stress. Emotional support becomes background music. It's there, steady and comforting, but not consciously appreciated. Then one day the music stops, and the silence makes him notice how much it mattered. He starts feeling unsettled, irritated, distracted, not because something new is wrong, but because something familiar is missing. A man might not say he misses you. He might not even admit it to himself right away. Instead, it shows up in comparison. He talks to other people and realizes the conversations don't flow the same. He notices that opening up feels harder now. He realizes that the patience you had, the way you listened without judgment, the way you encouraged him without pressure, was rare. That realization doesn't happen instantly. It creeps in slowly, but once it arrives, it stays. Here's the part many people overlook. Emotional memory is stronger than physical presence. You don't have to be there to be remembered. Feelings don't operate on distance. A man can be surrounded by people and still feel the absence of the one person who truly made him feel seen. And when life challenges him, when things don't go his way, his mind naturally drifts back to the place where he felt understood and supported. That place was you. Even if he doesn't reach out, even if weeks or months pass, the emotional imprint remains. Pride, fear, and ego can stop a man from contacting you, but they cannot erase what you represented in his life. He remembers the version of himself he was when he was with you. He remembers how he felt more grounded, more confident, more at peace. And missing that version of himself is often what makes him miss you. So if you're wondering whether you still cross his mind without contact, understand this: emotions don't disappear when communication ends. They settle into memory, and memory has a way of bringing people back again and again to the ones who made them feel something real. Let me tell you a truth that doesn't get talked about enough. Silence creates space, and space creates reflection. When communication ends, the mind doesn't shut down. It finally slows down. When you were constantly present, there was no room for him to sit with his thoughts. There was always a message, a call, a distraction. And distractions are comfortable because they keep people from having to think too deeply. But once the noise is gone, the mind has no choice but to look inward. When you stop reaching out, you're not just removing yourself from his day, you're removing the emotional cushion you provided. That cushion protected him from feeling the full weight of his decisions. It softened his mistakes. It absorbed his stress. And without it, he starts to feel things more intensely. That's when reflection begins. He starts replaying moments, conversations, reactions. Not because he wants to torture himself, but because his mind is trying to make sense of the sudden quiet. Men process loss differently. They don't always react immediately. Instead of sadness, it often shows up as restlessness. He feels off but can't quite explain why. He feels distracted, irritated, or unusually quiet. And over time, those feelings push him to think about what changed. That's when he realizes the silence didn't just happen, it came from you stepping back. And once that realization hits, the mind starts connecting dots. Reflection doesn't focus on surface-level things. It goes deeper. He starts questioning how he handled situations, what he ignored, what he assumed would always be there. He remembers moments when you showed patience he didn't deserve, understanding he didn't earn, loyalty he didn't protect. Those memories don't rush in all at once. They come slowly, usually when he's alone, when there's no one else to distract him from them. Silence also removes validation. When you were there, he had constant reassurance, someone who listened, who cared, who noticed him. Without that, he starts feeling unseen, and that feeling pushes him inward. He starts reflecting not only on you, but on himself, who he was in the relationship, who he became when you left, and whether he handled something valuable with the care it deserved. This is why silence can be so powerful without you doing anything at all. You're not trying to make him think. You're simply allowing him the space to finally do it on his own. And when reflection comes from within, it's stronger than anything forced from the outside. Nobody had to convince him. Nobody had to argue your worth. The absence did all the talking. So even without contact, you occupy mental space, not because you're chasing, reminding, or explaining, but because the quiet gave him room to remember. And reflection doesn't need communication to exist. It only needs space. Let me be clear about something people often misunderstand. A man's pride can stop his hands, but it cannot stop his thoughts. Just because he doesn't reach out doesn't mean you don't cross his mind. It means there's a battle happening inside him that you don't get to see. Pride is powerful. Ego is loud. And fear of admitting loss can be stronger than the desire to reconnect. But none of that erases memory or emotion. For a lot of men, reaching out feels like surrender. It feels like admitting, I messed this up, or I didn't value this the way I should have. And that's hard, especially for a man who ties his self-worth to being in control, being strong, being right. So instead of sending the message, he sits with it. He replays conversations. He wonders how you're doing. He thinks about what he would say if he did reach out, and then pride tells him not to. Here's the part you need to understand. Silence on his end is not always confidence. Sometimes it's confusion. Sometimes it's regret mixed with stubbornness. He might believe that if he contacts you, he'll look weak. Or worse, he'll open a door he's not sure he deserves to walk back through. So he convinces himself to stay quiet, not because he doesn't care, but because caring feels risky. Men are taught early to hide emotional loss. They're taught to keep moving, stay busy, distract themselves. And that's exactly what he does. He fills his time. He keeps himself occupied. But distraction only works for so long. Late at night, when there's nothing left to do, when the phone is quiet and the room is still, that's when pride loses its grip. That's when thoughts creep in. That's when he remembers you. He remembers moments he brushed off. Things you said that didn't make sense to him then, but make perfect sense now. He remembers your patience, your effort, your consistency. And the hardest part isn't missing you. It's realizing you might not be there anymore if he finally admits it. Pride tells him to protect his image. His heart tells him he lost something real. And those two voices don't agree. This inner conflict is why you can be on his mind without a single message being sent. He doesn't need contact to remember. He doesn't need conversation to feel regret. In fact, sometimes not contacting you makes the feeling stronger, because every day he stays silent, he knows it's a choice, and choices carry weight. So don't mistake silence for indifference. Sometimes silence is a man sitting with the reality that he let something valuable slip through his fingers and doesn't know how to face it. Pride may keep him quiet, but it doesn't give him peace. And as long as he hasn't made peace with the loss, you remain on his mind, unfinished, unresolved, unforgettable. Let me tell you something that cuts deeper than most people realize. Emotional imprints don't disappear just because communication ends. When a woman truly mattered, She doesn't fade away with silence. She stays in the mind, in the memory, in the emotional muscle of a man's life. Time doesn't erase that kind of impact. Distance doesn't undo it. What you leave behind emotionally is far more powerful than how often you were physically present. When you were in his life, you weren't just a person he talked to. You were part of how he functioned emotionally. You were the one who listened when he didn't have the words, the one who understood his silence without taking it personally, the one who saw through his frustration and still chose patience. That kind of connection creates an imprint, and once it's there, it becomes part of how he remembers comfort, safety, and understanding. Here's the truth about emotional imprints. They surface when something familiar is missing. He might not notice it right away. At first, life goes on. He stays busy. He fills his time. But slowly, moments arrive where something feels off. He achieves something and realizes there's no one to share it with who reacts the way you would have. He struggles with something and notices there's no voice calming him down the way yours did. That's when the imprint speaks. Men often don't recognize emotional depth while they're inside it. They feel it, but they don't label it. It's only when it's gone that they understand what it actually meant. That's when memories shift from casual to significant. He starts remembering not just what you did, but what your presence allowed him to feel about himself. More confident, more supported, less alone. Those feelings don't disappear just because the relationship ended. An emotional imprint also changes how he experiences new people. He may meet others, talk to others, even date others, but comparison starts happening quietly. Not because he's trying to be unfair, but because the standard was set when you were there. He notices that conversations don't go as deep. That understanding doesn't come as easily. That patience feels thinner, and each comparison leads him back to the memory of you. This is why no contact can be so powerful without you doing anything at all. You're not reminding him. You're not convincing him. You're not proving your worth. The imprint does that for you. Silence allows the memory to speak uninterrupted, and memory has a way of growing stronger when it's not constantly refreshed by new interactions. What makes emotional imprints so hard to escape is that they're tied to identity. He doesn't just miss you, he misses who he was when he was with you. He misses how grounded he felt, how understood he felt, how he didn't have to explain himself all the time. Losing that version of himself creates a quiet grief that lingers longer than people expect. Even if he never reaches out, even if he never says it out loud, the imprint remains. It shows up in moments of vulnerability, in moments of stress, in moments when he wishes someone truly knew him. Emotional connections don't need contact to survive. They live in memory, in feeling, in the spaces silence can't touch. Let me leave you with something powerful to understand. When you choose healing and self-focus, that's when your absence hits the hardest. Not because you're trying to prove a point, but because your energy changes. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop waiting, and start pouring that same effort back into yourself, something shifts in the dynamic. You're no longer emotionally available in the way you once were, and that change is felt even from a distance. A man can sense when a woman has moved into a different season of her life. You're not reaching out the same. You're not reacting the same. You're not emotionally open in the same way. And that absence of access creates awareness. He realizes he no longer has the comfort of knowing you're there if he decides to show up halfway. That realization doesn't come from words, it comes from energy. When you focus on healing, you stop carrying the emotional weight for both of you. You stop being the one who holds the connection together. And without that support, He starts feeling the full weight of his own emotions. That's when your absence becomes loud. Not because you're gone, but because you're no longer absorbing what he avoided dealing with himself. Self-focus also changes how you exist in his memory. You're no longer the woman who was always available, always understanding, always adjusting. You become the woman who chose herself. And that version of you commands respect, even in silence. He starts wondering how you're doing, what you're building, who you've become. Not because you told him, but because you stopped showing him everything. Here's the truth: growth creates distance that can't be crossed easily. When you level up emotionally, you're no longer standing in the same place he left you. And that realization can be unsettling. He understands that if he were to come back now, he'd have to meet you at a higher standard. And that awareness alone keeps you on his mind. Your healing also removes guilt from hiding. When you were hurting,